Well, if you were excited yesterday about the decision of the tribunal to knock out PDP's presidential candidate Atiku's petition, then you have your excitement short-lived because the incoming VAT, 7.2%, will affect every Nigerian, whatever side of the tribunal's table you were seated yesterday. And that's one of the big stories, the tightrope that President Buhari's second term is taking off. Let's talk to Paul Elijah, who is a senior economist at SPA Professionals. He's live to us from Abuja studios yesterday. This morning, Paul, I'm sure you've seen some of the newspapers. It's all about the tribunal's decision, but the big stories hanging around the other pages, the front pages of the newspapers, has to do with salary review, 30,000 minimum wage, the VAT going up to 7.2%, among other stories. So, I'm coming here, Paul, as what you think this means for the next level that is just taking off and we're just strapping on our seatbelts.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and good morning. Of course, I believe that many Nigerians will be expecting this before now. I make reference back to what the president mentioned in 2018 when he was presenting budget, while he mentioned that the biggest challenge, the biggest fiscal challenge to the administration is revenue generation. So 5% of VAT projected in 2019 budget. It shows that federal government will wholly use VAT to finance 3.3% of that budget, which means 3.3% is not just enough if you are looking at a source of revenue to plan entire 2019 budget. I mark you, when you look at revenue component, it's not even up to the 9 trillion naira budget. It means that government will need to do more in terms of revenue generation. Now, so the question is, how do we do more? Do we reduce costs or do we increase revenue? Now, there are options of reducing cost on the table, and there are also options of increasing revenue. Now, government have said at this time, while we continue to manage our fiscal expenditure, we'll perhaps focus more on expanding revenue. Now, the challenge with this is that the economy is currently contracting for 2.1% to 1.94%. Is contracting the economy further the best policy? And that is what economics we answer. So the question is, from 5% to 7.2%, what addition would that give us in terms of revenue generation?
So Paul, a quick one. In terms of revenue,
to make the difference.
Yes, in terms of consumption, we have VAT at 5%, one of the lowest around the world. We need to increase VAT, and I think all of you economists and some of us who are business journalists agree, and some folks on the street agree that we need to raise VAT to 5%. We need to pay more. But talking about economic contraction, look at the projection for next year, 2.9% GDP growth forecast. But again, if you're going to increase VAT in an economy that is contracting, how do you then stimulate consumption and stimulate production?
That exactly is the question. When you further increase VAT, which of course is consumption tax, and it has implication directly on disposable income. I think you were right with your last conversation before the break that government is giving with a hand and collecting using the other hand. That exactly is what it is. Of course, it happens all around the world, but this happens more with circular flow of income. But what we experience now is government will generate the money from everybody, and we use that to pay labor that is yearning for 30,000 naira minimum wage. Of course, what will all of this be? You'll be expecting high inflation in the coming period, partially because of border closure, also because of implication on taxes, because prices, individuals who have not any more, it will have implication on their input material, because it has to do with supply chain line and how much value people have added. But if no value has been added in the real sense and taxes has increased at the same time, then you should have implication of that on pricing. So in 2020, what should we expect exactly? That will mean that if we implement VAT without necessarily adding in terms of value to the economy, you might have that effect on pricing, you might have that effect on further contracting the economy. That average of what we have done now is about 2% from the first half, a bit less than 2% for the first half, or approximately 2% for the first half. This is an economy population growth of about 3%. We need to grow between 7 to 12% annual GDP growth rate. But we are doing far less than that as we speak at this moment today. So it's already in the media. Perhaps government wants to see how people will respond to that. I understand that the FRA chairman has said, why not expand the bracket? Let's see if we can bring more people to the bracket. And the last conversation we had regarding this on this show has to do with FRA saying online transaction, etc., etc. Something is certain: those who have been paying right now, if they are to pay 7.2, definitely revenue would increase, but that may discourage consumption at the same time, apart from commodities that are really very, very necessary.
So, Paul, it's a very tightrope now for Mr. President and his team. A report which will be coming out at about 11:30 today from the AFDB, the African Development Bank, is creating jobs, creating decent jobs. I need to underscore that. Creating decent jobs, strategies, policies, and instruments. And this report will highlight that the manufacturing sector, quoting a statement from the AFDB, from Ivory Coast, says, provides more long-term economic benefits than any other sectors. So we need to spend money into manufacturing. Now we're spending much more into insecurity. So this is one very difficult one. The administration needs to keep the country safe so that people can go about their lives, the daily lives and businesses. But insecurity or terror, whatever, takes more money and does not largely create wealth nor jobs.
Now, you see, the child you refuse to train on the streets, we come back and take from your children that you have trained, because they say it's a commonwealth of the people. That perhaps is one of the reasons why we have widespread of insecurity around the country today. So what you see is that from 2009 to 2019, military security budget has been among the top 3 components of reasons why we take huge expenditure, both in capital and recurrent expenditure. And just to put a perspective to it, the popular Dansuki Gate that was in the media 2016, 2015, 2016 was more than, the figure is more than $2 billion US. And to put a perspective to this, a book written by the Prince of Dubai talks about my vision. And afterward, he also wrote Flashes of Thought by the Prince of Dubai. He revealed in the book that Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, was built, the cost was $1.5 billion US. So when you look at what we spent and Burj Khalifa, what it gives to the country, the economic activity, if you must enter Burj Khalifa in a day, is not the kingdom of God, however, but you will have to pay 50 dirham. 500 dirham, I beg your pardon, not 50 dirham. 500 dirham is what you pay to enter the building. It's not that you are having an office. I think, I'm not sure, maybe equivalent of 50,000 naira. That's what you pay. And imagine number of people that want to visit the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. The surrounding environment was about $600 million. Put together $2.1 billion US, including the dancing fountain. So people leave their countries and they want to go on holiday, giving money to countries that have not just invested in infrastructure, but also invested in a way and attracted more people. This is equivalent of money that we pump into security, because as population expand, there will be pressure on infrastructure, pressure for education, pressure for security. So if we don't do the needful now, it will certainly have a way of coming back to hurt us. That is why we are investing more in security to keep our lives secure. Meanwhile, economic activity, not so much has been heard in that regard. So how do you measure? At National Bureau of Statistics have released figures consistently from 2014 to 2018. And if you check the figure all through from the years mentioned, you will see steady growth of unemployment figures. From 2014 of 2015, I think it was around 9%, but less than 10%. What you have now is more than double of that. Why? Because as insecurity increases, private sector find it difficult to do business. There is pressure on government to now see more people out. And it will come in terms of how do we give more jobs to people? Public sector, now that's government now. State government wants to reduce unemployment by putting more burden. As it puts more burden, it's not really solving the problem, because recurrent expenditure expenditure in the state budget would increase. And you have limited resources. So as recurrent expenditure increases, you have less to spend on capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, however, is what will impact the general population within the state, within local government, and more importantly, within the federal government.
Yes.
So perhaps that is why you see federal government saying we need to do more in terms of revenue generation,
just a quick one,
because we might just be carrying loads.
Just a quick one here within the time frame we have, Paul. Yeah, with so much soundbite from the federal, from Abuja here, Mr. President and the rest of his team, we're hearing a little bit far less of these fiscal issues around the 36 states of the federation. So we come to the subnationals. They need to return some of the money they've been bailed out with from the federal government via the central bank, as it were, and all of that. How fast and how quick do you think these states, the subnationals, need to have this handshake, as it were, coordination, cooperation, be on the same economic page with President Buhari and his economic team as far as this economic revitalization? Yes, tough times are needed. Tough times never last. Only tough people do. So if we say Mr. President is on track, there'll be some tough times, where are the 36 state governments in this conversation?
But tough people will last if they are doing the right thing. I can tell you 21 states are in economic ICU as we speak. And I'll give you an instance of one state in Southwest and 2 states in Northeast. As we speak, on the average, because I'm combining 3 states, internal revenue generation for these states is between 1 billion per month to 1.8 billion, the one that earned the most among the 3 states. These same states earn from federal government between 1 to 3 billion naira on monthly basis. Now, what these states spent on salaries alone is approximately 3 billion naira. To fulfill other responsibility in the recurrent expenditure, as regards to current expenditure, the state will need 30% more, each of them extra 30% to be spent. Why will they now finance capital expenditure? That is why they need to borrow more, or to borrow in order to fulfill capital expenditure responsibility as contained in various budgets. The truth is that these states cannot survive. It is the obvious truth. Even federal government is aware. But of course, when fire burns you, an African adage, and burns your child, you will sort yourself out first. Because the fire, economic fire, is not just burning the state, it's also on the shoulder of federal government. Federal government say, by all means, let's bring our money. So what Nigeria needs is beyond federal government or state government or local government. As you mentioned, all government, national and subnational, must come together and see how we have an external injection of funds, like what Chinese is doing with Nigeria. Yeah, we may call it borrowing, particularly as it has to do with the railway, pumping more money into why Nigeria balance with the rest. That will create more jobs. That will expand the economy. We need to look for opportunity within sectors. It may include education, it may include banking, but more importantly, where you can get long-term job and take more people out of poverty. This is what China, India, Indonesia, this is what these countries have done. And this is what I'm recommending for Nigeria, or to Nigerian authorities to do, which is investment in manufacturing. We can have meaningful chunk of our population from being very poor and having over 89 million people in dimensional poverty, as recently reviewed by UNDP, and take these people out of poverty. Not until we wait for 10 years to take them, maybe we can reduce the number of years to 3 or 5.
Paul Alaje, Senior Economist at SPA Professionals. Thank you very much for your thoughts this morning.